First, I would like to thank CII for organizing this webinar, which gives us this opportunity to interact directly with our stakeholders, in fact, the most critical stakeholders, who are the entrepreneurs themselves. So I think as we had discussed with CII, what I'll basically do is give a brief introduction of the policy issues and related issues of the SEZs as we are viewing it today. I'll try and keep it very brief, to about less than 10 minutes. And then, of course, we can discuss any specific issue which you may have in mind. May I also make a request that if there are certain specific issues which are very specific to a particular unit or to a particular entrepreneur, please feel welcome to ask them, but do give me the liberty to take it up later if time permits. And if any such issue requires a certain detailed feedback, then I promise to get back to you within a reasonable time. I've requested my colleagues in the CII to give me an entire list of the questions which you'll be asking. So please feel assured that we will answer all your questions. So Angela, is that okay? Can we go on now?
Yeah, we can go ahead with the presentation now. Right?
Okay. So very briefly,
Shall we how to explain?
okay, we're just sorting out a bit of technical issues.
Next slide. And
Okay, so just to dwell a little bit on this slide, because what after all was the rationale, why the SEZs, what was the concept when the government thought about it? So it will not come as a surprise to most of you, because one of the first export processing zones in India was set up in 1965 at Kandla. And about the same time that Mumbai, the SEZs at Mumbai, Chennai, Cochin, Falta, Noida, they were all the SEZs was established by the government. The government invested in the infrastructure and invited entrepreneurs to come and set up base. Yet not much happened in that period. And the reason for that was very pretty complicated, but broadly speaking, three major culprits, so as to say, were identified. First, that there was a multiplicity of controls. There were too many agencies who were holding control over the entire system of export processing zones. Second, of course, that there was an absence of a world-class infrastructure. And of course, there was an unstable fiscal incentive regime. I mean, the entrepreneurs did not know what incentives and for how long were they going to get such incentive. Now, the government also came to the conclusion that it was not possible to allow this, to address these issues on a countrywide basis. So therefore, the next best solution was to have specified enclaves, geographical areas marked out, which can be given special treatment, and then from where we can get exports a big boost. So the EPZs were established in the 70s, and this graduated into the Special Economic Zones Policy, which was announced in April 2000, and which, as you are familiar, was led to the Parliament passing the Special Economic Zones Act in 2005, and of course the rules in 2006. So since 10th February 2006 is when we have a Special Economic Zones Act and attendant rules which are governing the SEZ policy of the Government of India. Now, this is an act of Parliament, right? It's not just a government policy. It is a policy which has been enshrined in an act of Parliament. Now, the key objectives are, again, many people tend to mistake it that it's simply an export processing zone. These are not export processing zones. They are special economic zones. And the various objectives of them, 5 are the primary objectives. First is generation of additional economic activity, promotion of exports of goods and services, of course, and then promotion of investment from domestic and foreign sources, creation of employment, and development of infrastructure facilities. These are the broad areas in which the SEZs are targeted to contribute. How did we plan to achieve it? Simplified procedures for SEZs, single window clearances, of course, as I mentioned, a designated duty-free enclave, and of course, simplified compliance procedures. This was, of course, targeted to achieve the objectives which I just discussed in the last slide. With their permission, I'll just speed up a bit so I don't spend much time on this so that we can have more time for questions. Fiscal incentive regime, as was originally planned and is still in force, is a duty-free import of domestic procurement of goods and services for setting up an SEZ or for setting up a unit in an SEZ. External commercial borrowing, the limits were very liberal, up to $500 million in a year. Exemption from central and state levies like sales tax, service tax, and some other state levies. Single window clearance, we have the concept of a development commissioner who's based in the SEZ, who is supposed to provide this single window clearance, and of course we have at the central government level the board of approval. Income tax exemption, of course, that most of us recognize has been severely curtailed with effect from 1st April 2011, when the MAT, the minimum alternate tax, and the dividend distribution tax have now come into force, and they have been applied to SEZ developers and units. Of course, there is no specific requirement for exports, but there is a very liberal requirement of net foreign exchange earnings, because after all the government is giving you certain incentives, and in return what is being demanded is that a unit should be net foreign exchange earner over a 5-year period. And then of course domestic sales are allowed, but at full customs duty. And the reason for that is that it is basically a enclave which is beyond the customs territory of India. So it is beyond the customs territory, so it is treated as whenever you sell any goods from the SEZ to the DTA, it is as if you are importing goods into India. So that will then entail payment of duties. This of course is an administrative structure. I'll not dwell on it too much, but the intent is to keep it very simple. Now these are the latest figures we have, which are quite encouraging in more than one ways. We have formal approvals of over 586 SEZs, and then the notified SEZs are approximately 385. And the operational SEZ, which is the little disturbing figure, is 158. In fact, now the latest I can update it is 161. So 158. And we have in excess of 3,600 units which are approved in SEZs. But I'll come to this gap between the operational SEZs. Operational SEZs meaning an SEZ from which at least one unit is exporting. That's what we call an operational SEZ. Now the exports, so one looks at it, then one would look at the last column. In 2006 and 7 we were exporting about 35,000 crores, and today, the last year in 11-12, we have exported 3,64,000 crores, which is a huge jump. And in the current year itself, as I was discussing with my colleague here, Angela, that we have already achieved 2,36,000 crores worth of exports in 2012-13 in the first 2 quarters, which is a big jump of nearly 35%. This of course gives you a rough idea of which are the major sectors. Of course we have computer and electronic software, gems and jewelry, chemicals and petroleum refinery, and if you take out these 3 major sectors, the other manufacturing sectors still contribute close to 60,000 crores worth of exports, which by no stretch of imagination is a small figure. So therefore it is a very encouraging sign that SEZs are doing extremely well. Of course they can do much better. In terms of employment, we are providing employment to in excess of 9 lakh people, and the investment in the SEZs has exceeded about 2 lakh and 13 to 15,000 crores. This is basically just a slide which basically shows that while our exports are increasing, but so are the imports. So therefore, this M minus X, which must be appearing as a green bar on the slide, is basically representing the trade balance, which is also increasing pretty sharply. And that is where the necessity to augment exports out of SEZs to invite more FDI, that is where it comes in. And of course, this is the imperative of enhanced export growth. I'll not get into it too much. But basically, the need of the hour is increased FDI and increased exports, manufacturing exports. Services, we are doing extremely well, and in terms of, we are really a powerhouse in terms of export of IT services and other services. But where the thrust is necessary now is manufacturing. This is where we really need to accelerate our efforts. This is where the government is now increasingly looking at, and we are looking forward to suggestions from across the board on how to achieve this in a much more efficient manner. Now, this is a slide which indicates that nearly 25 to 30% of the total exports from India are from SEZ. So SEZs are a major player in the exports of the country. What about the impact of SEZs? Most of you may know that there is a direct employment, of course, which I explained to you, just mentioned, about 9 lakh plus. There is also an impact in terms of indirect employment. Anybody in the IT sector will easily tell you that for every employment created in the IT SEZ, you are creating at least 3 more outside. So the impact on indirect employment figures is huge in any area. Second, we have actually studied that there have been changes in the consumption pattern and social life in the area where the SEZs come up. Emergence of new economic activities, yes, it's a totally a new ball game in that area where the development takes place. So we have witnessed very positive signals in this direction also. And of course, human development facilities such as education, healthcare, etc. are a natural corollary wherever the SEZs come up. They contribute very positively to these crucial areas of human development facilities. Now, while everything is not, one cannot say that everything is absolutely fine with SEZ. So what we have studied so far indicates there's some trends in the SEZ sector growth which are not always comforting. There's a little bit of disturbing trends. I'd like to share them with you. First, that there is a geographical concentration of SEZs. I'm talking about the first 6 years. We've just been 6 years into SEZ policy. So there has been a geographical concentration of SEZs, mainly in the states of Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, which accounts for nearly 92% of the total exports from SEZs. Secondly, that there has been an urban-centric growth. Most of the SEZs have not really moved to the hinterland where the real growth was targeted. So there have been an urban-centric growth around urban agglomerates. Thirdly, the sectoral dispersion. There is a predominance of IT SEZs. Of course, that can be explained because IT SEZs tend to be very, they're dependent on human capital, and that can be established very fast. So their gestation periods are very small. So they tend to, but having said that, today, after 6 years, we have nearly 91 of the 160 odd SEZs. They are IT SEZs. And in the multi-product SEZs, which really contribute towards the manufacturing, we only have 17 such multi-products. This has also resulted in a skewed export pattern. 2/3 of the SEZ exports are from IT SEZs and petroleum sector, which I just showed you. So non-petroleum manufacturing contributes a very small minority. Then also we are extremely concerned about the inadequate progress made in the manufacturing activity sector. This is, as I have just requested, that we would really be looking forward to certain suggestions, certain ideas, how the government can help in promoting manufacturing activities in India and in the SEZs in particular. And of course, as I had mentioned earlier, our concern is that the number of notified SEZs are not becoming operational. meaning thereby that after notification or after formal approval, the SEZs are not beginning to export. That means the units are not coming in enough numbers. So we still have a big gap between the SEZs which are notified and those which are operational. This is of course just a bird's eye view of where the things are located, and as they would indicate, there is a concentration towards the southern and the western parts of India. And while states, large states like Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Jharkhand, they remain, and the northeast of course, remain practically untouched by this. This is where we have deep concerns. This map is again just reflecting that. The pie you can see, Andhra is leading with 25% of total SEZs, then Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Gujarat, small spattering in Kerala, which is 5%, and others contribute just 15% of the total SEZs which are operational today. Now this is a slide which may look a little complicated, but one would just needs to concentrate on the blue bars and the red bars. So these are various states. You will see the blue bars, which basically represent the approved SEZs, where the entrepreneur has expressed his intention to set up an SEZ, but the red is where it translates into it getting operational. That there's a huge gap between the two, and this is where our major concern lies. Sector-wise distribution, of course, I just mentioned to you, there's a large majority of IT and IT-enabled services. Of course, that's a very important sector for us, IT sector and IT-enabled services. It's a very, very important sector. We are looking to support it and to encourage its growth in a big way. But at the same time, we are also looking at encouraging growth in pharma, in engineering, in other manufacturing sectors. The main sector breakup, I have mentioned just a graphical representation, same thing, but basically it mentions that how the manufacturing still constitutes a very small percentage of the total exports from the country, which is a major area of concern for us. Of course, this is the happy figures. The employment and the investment are showing a sharp rise in SEZs. If you look at exports, yes, they have a very happy curve. We would like it to be even steeper. We like to see the growth grow even higher. Success stories, I mean, I'm sure most of you may be aware, but we are very happy. These are not the only ones, but some of the larger ones, which are the earlier ones: Apache, Nokia, Mahindra City, the Sri City, Nellore, Chittoor, multi-product SEZ, then of course the Brandex Apparel in Vizag, of course Serum Biopharma in Pune, Reliance Jamnagar SEZ Refinery, and IT, the number of IT SEZs, Quark City, Mohali is being one of them. So what are the challenges? I'll just like to briefly dwell on them. First, of course, we recognize that there is a non-availability of non-double cropped contiguous vacant land for SEZs. Land is a major challenge for us. Secondly, of course, we have to recognize, we have to acknowledge that there is a changed fiscal regime by the imposition of MAT and DDT, and of course the direct taxes code, which is still going to be announced very soon, that also holds challenge for the SEZ sector. Single window mechanism is something which needs to be strengthened even further with improved coordination between the state and the central governments. But there may be some issues which you may have, so I'll be happy to hear them out. Of course, large number of states do not have an SEZ policy or an act, which again is something which we are deeply concerned about, and we are taking action to address it. The slow pace of development of infrastructure within SEZs and the external support infrastructure. Then of course, non-availability of incentives for SEZs and the schemes such as the Focus Product Scheme, Focus Market Scheme, the DPB, Duty Drawback, VKGUI, etc. The government has actually come up with an SEZ policy and an operational framework reform initiative. CII has been extremely helpful in their suggestions in this matter, and so have other trade bodies. And we have had a discussion paper on this, which some of you may have seen and may have contributed to in terms of ideas. And we have come up with a SEZ policy and operational framework reform initiative. This initiative presently, I can inform you, is at a interministerial consultation stage where we are discussing it mainly with the finance ministry. They have their concerns in terms of the duty which is being foregone. So that's what we need to look at. But I can always share with you some of the major areas which are towards addressing the concerns which I just highlighted above, like minimum land area, issue of broadbanding, contiguity norms, vacancy issues, the areas relating to non-processing area, free trade, warehousing zone issues, IT SEZs, exit policies, and of course the concept of advanced ruling, where we want to give some sort of advanced ruling to give comfort to the potential investors, shifting and relocating of units in an SEZ, and other operational issues such as state government recommendations, consumables, which some IT SEZs have a major concern, and of course benefits exemption, the Rule 27 for subcontractors, and other many such operational issues. So I think let me take a break here. I think I've overshot my time, which I said 10 minutes. I think let me open the floor to questions. If there are any questions, do shoot them off, and I promise to do my best to answer them. Thanks for listening.